Welcome everybody, and quite a few of you have very little experience of IFS, and I know that some of you are very well versed, so hopefully with the concept of spiral learning there'll be things for everybody. So I've already done the introduction, so I'm just going to go straight in with a little bit about IFS, and then I'll bring it into the topic for today, which is about polyvagal and the autonomic nervous system and self-energy. So what is internal family systems? It was started 30 odd years ago by a man called Richard Schwartz, and Part's work has been in the psychotherapeutic field for a really long time, but he's just sort of brought it together with some fairly interesting concepts. He was working as a marriage therapist, and then in particular with some young women, and he was bringing in the concepts of marriage therapy into his work. And he noticed that people kept talking about, well, a part of me wants to cut, and a part of me wants to eat, and a part of me wants to binge and starve, and using marriage therapy, he kept asking, could that part wait? And could the part that binges speak? And getting to know the internal world like you would in marriage therapy, if you had a group of a family around you. And what he found out that, if all the parts are given space to speak and they can step back, there's a fundamental core self. So, very simply, the concept of IFS is that we all have multiple personalities within us. So, inviting you to think that there's lots of you and you within you. Many of these parts are entirely here to protect you, to look after you. It's like your own little army of your little SWAT team, your a group of protectors solely focused on looking after you. And also you may have little inner children who are burdened with vulnerable feelings that you might have exiled when you were little, and they're looking for healing. We get to adulthood and they're sort of pushing at the gates, going, heal me, heal me. And so what's just so beautiful in this model is that that's possible. We talk to the protectors. We really get to know two-way relationship with the protectors, and you're putting your one of the main aims is to re-establish yourself as the leader of the system, as the center of the system, having a relationship with your protectors so that eventually you can go and talk with the protector's permission to those little vulnerable inner children and help them. It's like, and do it safely. Do it really safely and carefully. So there's you. The subject of this talk, it's an absolute fundamental of IFS, that there's you. And who are you? Dick Schwartz loves, I think it's alliteration. So he says there are 8 C's. And the 8 C's he talks about are clarity, compassion, courage, confidence, curiosity, creativity, calmness and connectedness. I've put some pieces of paper there. Please take them and put them on your fridge. And I think it's Julia Simpson did this in 2010. And it's quite a fun thing to have, like how much of those qualities are with you at any time. You could photocopy loads and just sort of, where am I on a Monday morning and where am I on a Wednesday evening, and just see. So right now, I've got lots of courage for doing this talk. Sometimes I might find I have buckets of compassion, and other days I might have loads of curiosity. And sometimes I might have calm. But, everyone will have different amounts of each one showing up at any particular day. Dick Schwartz also talks about the 5 Ps: patience, persistence, perseverance, presence, and playfulness. I like also feeling into words like presence, like warm open-heartedness, like my inner wisdom. Self is like it's like the seat of your consciousness. It's, in Buddhist terms, it's the non-self. When I talk with clients, I invite them to, ask their parts to look at them at the age they are now, with all their competencies, with their overview of all their parts, with their overview of being an adult at the age they are now. So it's like a physical thing at the age you are, but it's also, another way of looking at it is that it's ageless, it's timeless, it's your spiritual core self, which, if it feels all right for you, connects in with others' core selves. So there's this collective self energy. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So it was Julia Sullivan, 2010. From self, we're looking to start having a relationship with our parts. And as some of you know, I'm really into stick people. And so I doodled these, and then I got a man on Fiverr called Maid Wirrawan who made these up for me. He drew them out. And there's lots of them, and please take them to put on your fridges. But the idea is that here I am, like the sunshine, and my parts, I can see my parts as like clouds. And sometimes you can't see me if I'm cloudy, but then the clouds come away a little bit, and there I am again. I could be like the conductor of my orchestra. I could be, sat round my kitchen table, or I could be with my parts in a board meeting, mayor of the town, captain of the Starship Enterprise, driver of the bus. I like inviting my parts to a campfire, and I sit round a campfire, and my parts sometimes like marshmallows and toasting marshmallows on fire. So whichever one of those, I don't know if any of those make sense to you, but some of them, those metaphors might sort of engage you a little bit. So self, as opposed to the autonomic nervous system that we're going to talk about in a minute, is innate in all of us, and it's we don't, in IFS, chase self. You invite parts to unblend. You invite parts to give you space so that you can be there to talk with them in a 2-part relationship. What we're going to do in a little bit later is the other way round. It's a sort of bottom up. Let's try and find self a little bit more. Let's take our way to self. So, a little bit about the individual parts. I mentioned that there are some protective parts and there are little ones. First of all, there's the proactive ones. We call them managers, and they come and they're looking after you sort of day to day. They're the rules, they're the regulations, they're the ones that sort of are trying to get you sort of through in this world, not rejected, not abandoned, liked. So, I don't know if you're into subgroups, but I quite like it. Examples of managers, anyone subgrouping here? Thinking, analysing, sceptical, inner critic, outer critic, judge, blamer, numb, hyper-focus, catastrophizing. Those are just some of mine. And then there are parts that have taken on the burdens, like the little inner children. And examples of exiles include abandoned, rejected, worthless, powerless, helpless, shame. Beliefs like I'm a mistake, I'm unseen, I'm unheard, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I'm too much. These are things that sort of many of us hold sort of deep down and pretend that we don't feel. And then if those parts sort of come up, because they're always trying to come up, they're always looking for healing, and stuff happens in everyday life, then firefighters turn up. And firefighters are the reactive managers, and they're the unsung heroes of the system. Love my firefighters. Firefighters are things like rage, fog, dissociation, scrolling, booze, drugs, fantasy, suicidal thoughts, distraction. They're the ones that come and they're desperate to try and soothe and calm, and they are entirely focused on trying to protect the exiles, trying to protect the vulnerable feelings from coming out. They actually don't care about people outside at all. They don't care about the relationship. So while the other person might be receiving a stream of something, the firefighter is only concerned about keeping the exiles down, if that makes sense. I'm seeing some nodding. Yeah, seeing some nodding, great. So parts take on roles to protect us from these childhood injuries. Something happens, life happens to all of us, when we're little, be it in families and schools and whatever, things happen, and within a few seconds of feeling really vulnerable or feeling hurt, a part will come and start doing something to protect you, and it'll work. And so you'll do it again, and then again, and it'll work for the first 10 times or the first couple of years. But then it's like Mike Elkin calls it a law. I don't know if it's a law, but protectors don't tend to get what they are looking for. They almost inevitably get the opposite. So if I'm cross and or if part of me is cross and then I have a part that takes me out the door, actually underneath that, I'm looking for connection. But this part has taken me out of relationship rather than asking for what I need. But this part is going, this is the only way of dealing with it. So it gets what it doesn't want. And we also have polarities within the system. So the part that likes cream cakes or whatever, and the part that doesn't want you to. And, I invite you to invite one part to one side of the table and the other part to the other side of the table and hear both sides. And then could they both look to me? I'm hearing the arguments from both sides, and I can, maybe we can negotiate and work things out. I'm here now. I'm here at the centre of my system. So what's the point of IFS? I hope you'll have got some of the points so far. But tip-top one is re-establishing you at the centre of your system. You're the adult. Most of these parts are sort of under 20, probably under 10. And so, when my rage part comes out, it's like a 3-year-old. Don't really want that running the system. It's really helpful in some ways, but I don't want that running the system. Don't want my perfectionist to run the system. Don't want my therapist parts to run the system. I want to, have their help, but I want it needs to be me at the centre of my system. 2, forming secure internal attachment. Really, really important. I'm sure all of you will have heard of, attachments theory, and I'm seeing lots of nods. And so attachments form with different people, and you might have a secure attachment with some and an anxious attachment with others. That goes internally too. But what we're looking for over time is a secure internal attachment, me with my parts. Maybe the first time ever I've had a really secure attachment within a relationship. It's really exciting. And so we can liberate the parts from their extreme roles and achieve more balance, harmony, and wholeness. And we can unburden the internal system. And I'm not going to go into today. Next time is cultural, societal, and familial legacy burdens. And we can, work with them. Burdens we've taken on from families and culture. And one of my favourite things, bringing more self-energy into external systems. This is about collective self-energy. This is what we're doing in this room, hopefully, is just feeling that wonderful collective self-energy and taking it out into our communities. This is where the revolution is. So how do we do IFS? We're going to do a little bit of a meditation. What's different about it? You're doing it internally. Normal therapy, you sort of, it's a bit of eye contact. This is, the invitation is to close your eyes or to soften your eyes and to get to know your system, get to know what's in your body, any images, any voices. It's introception rather than extraception. There's lots on the internet about IFS. I've already heard that there's some YouTube watch. We've got a Stroud Buddy Up group. You can have a little practice. There's IFS therapists. There's IFS informed therapists and practitioners too. There are Facebook groups. And I hope you keep coming back here. So I'm going to encourage you to, IFS isn't so, it's really simple in some ways and it's really not in others. And I think we need each other. I really strongly believe this. So, having a therapist or having a buddy or having some lovely, warm, friendly person, even in mind, will just help you. Because otherwise it's quite a lonely route just trying to do this on yourself. I can't do it on my own entirely. I know. Yeah, we need to mirror and validate and bathe in each other's self-energy. So you're closing your eyes, turning attention inward, breathing a little bit slower and deeper. I'm going to talk about breathing in a bit. And how do you notice your parts show up? I'm quite visual. Some people, and I hear my parts. Some people feel their parts much more. There's no real one, it's what's right for you, how you work with them. So you're finding the part in and around your body, you focus on it, and you start having a two-way relationship. There are loads of questions I can point you to ask parts, but it's really finding that curiosity from yourself. Like, what do you want to know about this part? What's your mission? What are you doing for me? What are your hopes? What are you hoping to achieve here? What are you worried about? Why are you, who are you protecting me from? What do you not want me to feel? When did you first come in? How long have you been doing this for? How old do you think I am? Most parts think that you're like 6 or like 15, and they don't realise that you're 51, or that I'm 51. The really important question to find self or to, just to see is, how do I feel towards this part? And if it's one of those wonderful words of compassion or curious or grateful or I feel really clear and calm, it's pretty likely that that's evidence of some self-energy. How amazing. And if you're not, if you're angry with it or judge it, that's great too. That's another part to get to know. Come and join the party. The party. So you're forming a relationship and, inviting polarities to go one side of the table and the other, and get to know one, ask parts to step back so that you can focus on one. And the idea is that it's all about an invitation. It's not about demanding, like, I don't want you here. It really isn't. It's do you want to be here in this room and listen to this conversation? Do you want to go and play outside? Some parts don't want to listen to conversations, so they might take themselves off, but we're not demanding they go. So how does this relate with the nervous system? What's this got to do with me? Why amalgamate polyvagal and IFS? So there is a fabulous IFS talk. There's a Spotify, Apple do IFS talks, and there's a great Deb Dana polyvagal and IFS talks. Deb Dana, she's IFS trained and she is a psychotherapist who works with polyvagal, who has translated Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory into easier to understand language and way to do things. So I'm going to recommend this very lovely book. And she's written a book called Anchored. For the therapists around, there's a polyvagal flip chart. So she's done IFS and polyvagal talk, and it's just great. And so this that I have created, you're very welcome to take one home and have it on your fridge, is my very playful doodling of trying to amalgamate IFS and polyvagal. So why would I want to do polyvagal and IFS? One, it's a snapshot of where I am. It gives me, I have this and I go, oh, am I sympathetically activated? I'm going to explain this. Have I got activation? Am I seeking safety in action, which puts me somewhere in this amber yellow zone? Or am I feeling a bit disconnected, a bit low? I'm seeking safety and disconnect. I might be down here. It's just really helpful. Snapshot of where I am. I can just look at this, or there's other ones on the internet. You don't have to do this one, and you can go, okay, my body is reacting. I am having something. It's good to have a snapshot of where you are, and so if you then might judge yourself a little bit less. It's like, oh, this is my body, and it's reacting in this way. I can feel maybe a little bit more compassionate towards myself. And you can feel a little bit less hopeless if you're down here, because, don't know if you can see, there's a ladder that can take you out. You don't have to stay stuck. You can get in a lift, you can climb a mountain, metaphorically, you can climb up a tree. Doesn't have to be a ladder, but you don't have to stay stuck forever. You can stay in there for a little bit. It's not about rushing to leave, but you can move. So you can, and I'll talk about a little bit how to, consciously return to ventral vagal. So this green space is not exactly the same as self, but self, in IFS terms, it's an emergent quality of ventral vagal. So we want to, it's lovely to spend lots of time in green. We all go into all of these states. We can come back to ventral vagal. We can help self and parts recover from a trigger. If something's happened, we can shake it off, and you can shift between states. I'm going to suggest a radical love plan. I always like radical love plans of really looking after yourself and knowing your state. And there's lists of things to do when you're in each state that can help move towards healing your vagal nerve, remyelinating. These are words that you can find out a little bit more about. But recovering from trauma. This is a really helpful thing to do. And finally, knowing about polyvagal and co-regulation, which I'll talk about in a minute, can help you spread the love. It's helping, self-energy, collective self-energy, co-regulation with others. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty close. And so I just find it really clear. So what is all this? So Stephen Porges is a scientist, and we used to talk about fight, flight and freeze. He spent a long time studying this, and he's added in this extra piece, which is the ventral vagal social engagement system. So a few things that are really important to know about polyvagal. It's a hierarchy. So when we were in our caves years and years ago, I don't know if we were, if some people were in caves, and a saber-toothed tiger would come, we would play dead. We would pretend we'd stop breathing and go very, very shallow, and it would be a state of collapse. And so this is the dorsal vagal nerve. And the dorsal vagal nerve is found around the belly. It's rest, digestion. Years later, historically we learnt to fight, we learnt to pick up tools, we learnt to engage and run. So that we learnt to engage the sympathetic nervous system, which is this amber yellow bit. And that runs up the spine. It's the nerves in the spine. And this is when you're activated. And the sole purpose of being activated is to keep you away from this. So this is disconnect, and this is action, this is movement. And so the parts that live in here are trying to keep you away from the parts down here. And then historically, so that's down the back, so then historically we learnt to engage, we learnt to live in communities and talk with each other and find safety in social connections. Find safety in the wonderful, co-regulation, being with another mammal, a human or an animal, in a way that feels safe, helps us, feel good, be in the flow. I'm quite similar to the feelings of self, or the qualities of self. They're emergent qualities from being in the flow, being in green. And so the ventral vagal nerve is also part of the parasympathetic. So parasympathetic, it's a different portion of the nerve. This is in your ears, so this is why music and humming and chanting is so good for the vagal nerve. And it runs down in your brainstem and into your heart and lungs. And slower, deeper breathing, heart-centered breathing, these are all so helpful for helping the ventral vagal nerve, helping you to move towards self. So it's a hierarchy, so in terms of history, in terms of where it is in the body, and also we all have to go through, if you're in dorsal, you have to go through sympathetic to come to ventral vagal. So 3 different hierarchies, if that makes sense. Second thing that's really helpful is neuroception. We're trying to go from neuroception to being conscious. So the neuroception is the milliseconds. Am I in danger? Am I safe? Am I danger? Is it safe? Is it danger? Is it safe? And most of us that have had trauma have very sensitive neuroception. And so it's really helpful to notice in this moment, am I feeling safe? Am I feeling in danger? And co-regulation, being with another mammal, really, really helpful. So often you want to disconnect, but even if you can disconnect with someone in the same room, or having a warm animal that you love or that loves you, is really helpful, just being alongside someone. So noticing where on your polyvagal ladder is really helpful. Just checking, is everyone aware of the state that they could be in? Does everyone know when the feeling of dorsal, the feeling of disconnect? So when I'm feeling good, I'm probably anchored in ventral. I'm anchored in that biological state that allows me to feel safe in the world. Internal connections are good, my breathing's good, I'm able to sort of access joy, I'm able to access calm. I feel pretty good. Then if I'm feeling active, I'm seeking safety and action, I'm likely to be in sympathetic. Fight, flight. So IFS, the protectors. Some of the managers are likely to be in the sympathetic. So when I am blaming, when I'm judging, I've got 2 little people here. I've got a judge looking at someone, or someone who's sort of going, someone who's obviously having, being a perfectionist or a self-critic. These are managers that live in sympathetic. There are also firefighters that live in sympathetic. These are the ones that keep us busy, that keep us moving and doing things. So fight, flight, there's, maybe the drugs that make you go high, rather than the drugs that make you go low. So some firefighters take you to sympathetic, some firefighters take you to dorsal. So the ones that are numbing take you to dorsal. There's something in the middle as freeze, which is that space where you're still, you're alert and you haven't decided whether you're going to go up or down. So you can't move, but you can't, you're just sort of frozen. Fawn, I've written down here because my experience of fawn is more dorsal, but it's also got a quality of activation. Do you know when you're people pleasing? Is anyone else a people pleaser? Oh, look at that! And down here are the little exiles. So I've got, shame behind a rock. I just want to hide. And grief and despair, they hang out down here. So you can see that these firefighters are so busy trying to keep you from feeling like this. It's possible just to add to it, and it's in the wherever the flip chart is. Here is wonderful, but also how wonderful is it to have a combo of green and yellow, and then you can play, you can be active, you can be busy, you can ride your bike, go swimming, and it's nourishing and exciting. I've got so much creative energy at the moment, and I'm pretty sure that my home from home is here. This is where I hang out, is sort of green, but with, lots of yellow or amber. And also there's something called dorsal rest. So green mixed with, and here's my little person down here, with red. This is the nourishing rest. We need to go and be alone. We need to have our headphones on and the shutters down and the eat comfort food and cuddle with your dog and just, if you've got a dog. And it's really helpful, particularly for those of us that have suffered trauma, for neurodivergent folk. It's just so important to have that rest. So it's dorsal rest is a combo of some green with it's the nourishing rest. So I wanted to tell you a little story before I finish. I don't know if anyone else finds filing difficult. Anyone? Yeah, there we go. So my filing system is good enough. It's not great. No one taught me how to file. It's not good enough. I mean, it is good enough generally, but I lost my V5, which is a thing that you own your car and how you own your car. And I just went into utter panic mode, and I could feel myself going up. I could feel my heart rate going. I could feel myself getting more and more and more panicked. And I didn't do what I preached at all. And I in Dan Siegel's term, I flipped my lid. My amygdala was firing, my executive functions just totally disappeared, and I was headless chicken, panic, rushing around, opening folders and, doing, just being very, 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 I can see now, amber, very activated, combined with, I could feel it, oh God, there's so much shame of I've lost this piece of paper and I could just feel the sort of, So I was flip-flopping between these two states and I could feel it. So what I did, I'm really proud to say, is I phoned a friend because I wasn't able to access my self-energy. I wasn't able to access me. If I'd caught it a little bit earlier, which I normally do, I could have, come round a little bonfire and we can sit and talk, guys. But I couldn't do that. I was away with the fairies. So I got someone and she co-regulated with me and it was amazing. And we sat there and we breathed for a little bit and we looked at my little infographic and we mapped out that I have a catastrophizing part and I had a really deeply critical part of I wanted to blame everybody for my losing my thing. I also blamed myself a lot. So lots of managers having a right go from Amber. I wanted to run out the phone call with her. I wanted to put the phone down. She suggested I do something. I had a little fight with her. So there was lots of parts in Amber. And then what I realised, there was a lot of shame and a little exile in there that was so distraught about, the whole thing and what had happened and, that I hadn't, I felt like I was about 5 And with the help of this other person, I was able to just breathe a little bit more, and my system was able to relax. And then we breathed a bit, we talked a little bit to my little girl, and then together we got in a lift, this person on the end of the phone, and she helped me, together we chose to rise up and go through sympathetic, and then, the doors of the lift opened, and there we were out with the lovely sunshine in green. And it was really beautiful. I was so moved by my experience. And of course, wouldn't it have been great to have caught it and be able to go inside and speak with my parts from self, ask everybody to take some breaths and do it the other way. But I'm just going to invite you to, this is a toolkit. It's like you can use your body, you can use where things are in your body, you can, use the traffic lights, you can spot your managers, you can map your own parts on your own traffic light system. It's what works for you. So if you can, I'm just going to, helping you move towards self-energy. Breathing. Everybody has got their own resonant frequency. If you're shorter, it tends to be around 5.5 breaths a minute. If you're taller, tends to be breathe, a little bit slower. My son breathes much faster, as children tend to do. So it's not about, just take some deep breaths, because that can be really triggering. If you are in sympathetically activated, it's better to have a short breath in and a longer breath out. If you're dorsal, if you're disconnected, it's really good to sip your breath and then have a shorter out breath. But choose the one that works for you. I'm not an expert. You're the expert of you. And play what makes me feel better of 5.5 breaths a minute or 6 breaths a minute. What works for you? Ventral vagal, heart, lungs. I want to introduce you to the concept of heart math techniques. Breathing, putting a hand on your chest and breathing like you're breathing from your heart, and consciously finding calm and compassion and breathing that. So you're using your experience of your nervous system and the memory of your nervous system of calm and compassion and love and care to bring it to mind, and then breathe it out, or breathe it towards your parts. Send them lots of love and care. All your protectors, appreciation, aren't you doing a great job? And to your littlies that's still needing help. You can breathe it to your family, you can breathe it to other people in this room, to the world. And there's a piece of paper down there that talks about, there's heart math, heart-centered breathing, quick coherent techniques, which you can look up if you want to. So lots of breathing things. Another way, of course, would be doing IFS, saying hi to my parts, having them around a table, really getting to know them internally. If you're sympathetically activated, sometimes it's play. Is it nourishing? Does it feel good? If it's not, if it's feeling like, organised movement, go swimming, go for a walk, clean your oven, preferably with someone. It's moving dispels the sympathetic activation. If you're down-regulated, if you're in dorsal, is that dorsal rest, does it feel good? If it doesn't, if it's feeling really dreadful, again, it's sometimes really difficult to be with people when you're in this state. But if it's possible, even in the same room, or having an animal with you, a mammal, just to sort of breathe with you. But this is a time to, move fingers and toes. Can you look out? Can you see some nature, greens, blues, flowers, fish tanks? Imagining you're walking on a beach, imagining you're walking in a wood. You might listen to comedy, you might listen to audiobooks, just sort of gentle things, and that can help move the energy just a little bit. Or if you've got someone sitting with that energy, because you don't want to be just pushing yourself out of it. And then when it feels right, when you have been there in each of these, well, in the state that you're in for a while, you've talked to your parts in these states, then Deb Dana suggests you can get on the ladder up. Take yourself up. Imagine yourself going up the ladder. Imagine yourself going up an escalator or climbing a rock face with someone. You know, borrow someone that you care about, you know, even if they're in your imagination. Come up with them, that they're there with you. So, to conclude, ventral vagal not totally synonymous with self, but self is an emergent quality of ventral vagal energy. We can help our nervous systems by doing IFS, and we can support by doing breath work, by knowing where we are in our bodies, and working in the ways that I've suggested. Lots of things to do on our own. There's lists on my website, there's lists on the internet of things to do when you're in each of these states. But my big plea for today is let's do this in community as much as we can, do it with other people. You know, co-regulation, collective self-energy, they're not synonymous, but they are. I think it's really important. We need each other. I need you. I like to think that you need me, or you need people like me, warm, sort of mammalian creatures. You know, let's help each other. You know, this is rebuilding vagal tone, remyelinating. It takes time, and we can help each other. We're constantly influencing other people's nervous systems. Isn't it better to be a safe, warm, other nervous system that impacts on others? I encourage you to do that. So I hope you'll enjoy doing IFS, forming secure internal attachment and creating inner community, self to parts, and then taking that out and connecting with others.